Good afternoon. I'd like to welcome everyone to this week's edition of Imperial as One's Belonging series, which explores the lived experiences of individuals from the Black, Asian, and minority ethnic communities. I say this every week. We wouldn't be able to have this Belonging series if it wasn't for people willing to share their experiences of belonging. And this week is no exception. We have Swapnil Jagtap, and he is a civil and environmental engineer, and he's been named in the Forbes 30 under 30, the MIT Review 35 under 30, Innovators under 35, and also the Georgia Tech 40 under 40 for his sustainability aviation research. So I'm really intrigued to find out about his research, but also about what it is that gives him his sense of belonging, which enables him to do such great work. So, Swapnil, I want to just say a big thank you again for being with us. And I'm going to ask my first question, which is, can you tell me what it is that has given you your sense of identity, sense of belonging as you were growing up?
Yeah, hi Wayne. Thank you for having me. Um, I think there are a lot of factors that has given me that kind of sense of belonging or the identity. Uh, while growing up, uh, the kind of the environment that I had around me, like people around me, especially uh, just to give you a brief background about how I was raised and what my family was or is. Uh, so I have like I have a quite a humble beginning. So basically, I have like two siblings, so we are three of us. And while growing up, we had like a very small house. Uh, and basically, the sense of or the importance of education was made uh, 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 quite well to us while we were growing up. So in that small house, we had this one small hall, like the kitchen and washroom area, and one bedroom. So the bedroom was kind of the privileged space for us. Um, so for me and my siblings, the bedroom was considered to be a privileged space for getting your studies done. So the priority was towards my siblings because they were like older to me. But yes, once my siblings they kind of passed through their schooling, etc., who are like both of them are elder to me. So once they were done with their schooling, I was given my kind of privileged space. So yeah, uh, that kind of thing. Um, your community also gives you that kind of, or it kind of molds you into the person you are.
So what can you tell me what it was about with your what was it that instilled that kind of like passion for learning? Was it how what was your family back? You said you had a modest family background. What
Yeah,
did your parents do, etc.? And why did they see education as something important?
yeah. So that actually goes back to into my dad's past. So he lost his mother quite early in his life, and coming from a very extremely rural part of India, he was basically he had to uh, start earning at quite an early stage, like let's say at the age of 10 or 12. So he did labor work, constructing roads, etc., etc. So he basically earned his living through that source early on. Then he supported his education through that means. And yeah, he kind of he's a self-made man. And then because he was self-taught, self-made, uh, through earnings through labor work and then getting education out of that, and then prospering in life. So that kind of instilled values in us, of the importance of education in us at quite an early age. So while growing up, we were quite aware. as to what education means and how it can uplift you in life. Which probably not everyone gets that kind of exposure given given the kind of uh, background their parents have. But yeah, in my case, that was quite evident at quite an early stage.
So it was your dad's experience losing his mother early, and then his it was him who instilled in you that it's
Yeah,
important. And in your sister and your siblings as well,
yeah. My two older sisters.
your two older sisters. So, what was it like for you at school then? What were you like? Were you your dad was telling you study hard, study hard? Was that what you did?
Oh yeah. So until like grade 1 to 5, I was quite a good student. But then, you are getting into the teenage, and I was quite not quite focused on studies between grades 5 to 10. So I used to play a lot of cricket. So most of my efforts were focused on playing cricket rather than studies. Up after school, I used to be on the playground.
So so I think I asked you earlier on, were you a Sachin Tendulkar, Dravid? Who were you? Which position were you best at?
I used to open batting for my school team,
Yeah.
but then I was not as good as Sachin or Dravid, or not a bowler as well. So I was like, I used to do both of them, but neither good at either of them.
Okay. But it was a passion, and
It
it
was it was
consumed you. So what changed then? What was it that changed? Why you weren't focused? What gave you that focus?
so in the Indian education system, grade 10 is considered to be quite a huge milestone in your academic studies, because this is grade 10 is what determines where you end up going, in your uh, high school, your university, etc., etc., etc. So in my case, given that kind of background I have, uh, year grade 10 is basically it was made quite amply clear to me that you need to focus, and this is what is going to change your life completely. So then I started taking more interest in studies, etc., etc., and focus my efforts towards getting good grades. And yeah, so that 1 year in grade 10 is actually uh, where I actually channelized my energy and my focus. So putting into the context of cricket. So if you know Mahendra Singh Dhoni, so he used to come and bat in the like final overs and make your team win. So in my context, I was the Dhoni and I batted well in that grade 10, and I did well in that year.
Okay, so it was a slow start, but
Yeah,
at the crunch point, you came
and
through.
exactly.
Fantastic. So, give me an illustration as when you say you came through in your class. What when you say you came through, where were you ranking, and how did that, and what subjects was it that you were excelling in?
Yeah. So throughout my primary schooling or secondary schooling, I used to be very good at math and science. But history, geography, social sciences is where I didn't excel well, or even languages.
Mhm,
And even like just putting things in perspective, even my English speaking was not that great in school. I was good, but I was not where I'm currently while speaking English. So even my communication skills were not that good.
mhm.
Uh, Also, in my class, I used to be between grades 5. So between grades 1 to 5, I used to be roughly in top five. Then again, when I in grades 5 to 9, where my focus was just cricket, I was sitting on the average rank in my class. So let's say if my class was a strength of like 70 students, I used to be at the 35th rank.
Yeah,
Uh, and even in grades, I used to be like 75%, etc., etc. So in grade 10th, one of my midterm exams, I scored something like 64% or something. But when I gave my final exams, which is like the board exam, I did well. to the extent of getting 87%,
Wow.
where my class rank, sorry, in my class or in my school, I was like in the top 10.
Yeah. So there was a massive jump.
Yeah, exactly.
So, and that was just because I'm not assuming that you stopped playing cricket, but your focus was no longer directly on cricket.
Yeah. So yeah, that one whole year almost. I mean, I didn't stop playing cricket, but yeah, obviously I devoted more time to studies than playing cricket.
Yeah, fantastic. So let me, you said that you you, you liked the sciences and maths, etc. Who were your role models? Did you have any role models when you were growing up that helped you or kind of like positioned you to say, you know what, you can do this?
So honestly, like in my family, I have like two older sisters, so they were the ones who were like guiding me through.
Mhm,
And in my family or in my extended family, we didn't have anyone to even guide my sisters. So it was essentially trial and tested approach that we were doing.
mhm,
So even for my sister's case, both are like they are like medical doctors. So they are the first generation of medical doctors in my whole lineage or in my extended family. And likewise, in my case, I'm the first engineer out of my engineer slash PhD in my
mhm,
family lineage. So yeah, for me, my sisters, my family, my dad were my role models, but just I didn't have anyone to look up to in my particular domain. Especially given that there was like less exposure to a lot of things
mhm.
while growing up.
So why was it that you then chose, because you've gone into engineering? What was the decision making process for going into engineering?
Yeah, so as I mentioned, like through my primary and secondary schooling, I always had this sort of inclination of liking towards science and mathematics. But then looking at my sisters, going through, preparing for medicine entrances, so I have had like a brief knowledge of what it could be.
Hmm.
Of course, like post 10th grade, I have the when I have to go to a junior college, I have to choose between sciences, arts, and commerce. So I quite was clear that I will be opting for sciences as a stream. But then over there, I had to make also a decision whether to opt for biology or not. But then looking at my sisters, I was quite sure that I'm not made for medicine. I always had this hunch that I'm made for engineering. So it is which it came to me instinctively. So I didn't opt for biology in my junior college. I went for physics, math, chemistry with one language, and computer science was my vocational training
Hmm.
uh, stream that I opt for.
Okay. So from that then, selecting those subjects, putting you on that kind of like science STEM track, as it were. Um, how was it that you got, where did you do your undergraduate degree? And what was it like for you doing that degree?
Yeah, so I did my undergrad studies at the University of Mumbai in mechanical engineering.
Mhm,
So again, it was quite it is quite a story as to how I got into choosing for mechanical engineering and for the college that I opted for.
mhm,
Uh, so while getting into post my 12th grade, where we have like this entrance exam, and then you have like multiple rounds of just we have in the UK, you have like these rounds of admission process in the admission process. So me and my father used to make this list of colleges that we'll be putting on the priority list,
mhm,
uh, and then we used to make this list, and then the push from my family was we should opt for these electronics and telecommunication stream, which was like the booming field at that time. So this is I'm talking about like 2008 times. So this is the stream that was like booming, and you would understand that you there was this evolution of uh, these different spectrums that were coming up, like 2G, 3G. So essentially, that field was booming at that time. And then looking in the neighborhood. in in your acquaintances, family, friends, etc., etc. People are saying, my daughter or my son, he has done electronics telecommunication, he has ended up with a good job. So
Mm.
then, yeah, that kind of pressure, I wouldn't say pressure, but that kind of was influencing the decision making. So my dad was like, let's make this list of colleges in the university that we can apply. And then we used to make that list and used to flip that list and change that from electronics telecommunication to mechanical engineering. So we used to make the list and I used to submit for mechanical engineering. And then there were like three rounds that happened. And then my dad was like, why are you not getting admission? And then at the end of the third round, I landed up with a college. And basically that was mechanical engineering. So my dad was surprised, how did you end up with mechanical engineering when we submitted for electronics and telecommunications? So then I was like, okay, I did this. Uh, yeah, my passion was there from the word go for mechanical engineering. Yeah, so I ended up with mechanical engineering in one of the topmost colleges in Mumbai. Uh, and then yeah, and even so in the first semester or so, there was this one uh, there was this one subject we
Yeah,
had,
yeah,
and we had a very, very bad teacher.
yeah.
And I was at the point of actually almost about to quit engineering studies or dropping out of engineering because he was such a pathetic teacher. So I was like kind of lost in my class as to, have I made this right decision to get into engineering? Am I made for engineering? So that kind of thoughts were like going through my head. But luckily I was able to get a separate coaching for that. Uh, I had like applied to this one coaching center and I got right coaching, and then apparently I did well in that subject. But yeah, just to make a point or register a point that from being or questioning my decision of getting into engineering at the very beginning of undergrad studies to the end of my undergrad studies, where I was in the top three ranks of my class, and also 41st in the University of Mumbai. So that journey actually wouldn't have happened if I would have persevered uh, and stuck to my decision of staying and also exploring getting a coaching and whatnot to
So
my
it
that
was
particular subject.
it was really key that intervention. One, you were on the verge of dropping out
Yeah,
because you felt that I don't understand any of this subject. Right,
yeah.
but that intervention by that teacher or by that lecturer was really key to you understanding the subject. And had you stopped at that point, you wouldn't have then gone on to do what you're doing now. So it's a key intervention for
Yeah,
you.
so actually that was not like the lecturer intervention. So I had applied for a private coaching
Okay,
outside of the college.
yeah, okay, and that was what helped you to fully understand the topic area.
Yeah, yeah,
Okay,
exactly.
so having then found kind of like refound your passion for the subject, why didn't you just go and get a job straight after you finished your degree? What were you thinking then? And you
Yeah, so
yeah.
I had actually got a job from college placements.
Hmm.
So this was in one of the manufacturing firms. So actually, it was more of a design manufacturing firms called as Godrej and Boyce
Hmm.
in Mumbai. Um, but I took up that job, but then I was in two minds whether to go for it or not. The reason being, there was like a bond period for 2 years in the initial stage. So I had to stick to that job for at least for 2 years if I were to continue doing it. So if I take up that job, then I have to stay for 2 years, else I shouldn't be doing it. So I was not very clear whether I'll be able to do it for 2 years.
Hmm.
Uh, and given that I always wanted to do a master's after my undergrad studies, so again, I had heard from some of my friends that once you get into earning and also doing a job, you won't be able to go back to learning. So I was like,
Hmm.
should I do that or should I not? So I ended up not taking up that job, but
Hmm.
then I took a year of gap. I would say gap, but more of that 1 year for making the application for my master's in the US. And in that 1 year, I did like these temporary jobs, such as uh, being a lecturer in an engineering college.
Okay, so you took up that, but you still wanted, you still had a passion to continue your studies.
Yeah,
So where did you go from there? Because you knew that just doing the job which you were doing wasn't what you wanted to do. So where did you
yeah.
go?
Yeah, so as I mentioned, like when I opted for being a lecturer in one of the engineering colleges, so that first of all got me that sort of a teaching experience that was going to help me in the US,
Hmm.
doing a teaching assistantship, etc., etc. Plus, it got me, salary. And in that meantime, I was also getting through the application process where I applied to 9 universities
Hmm.
in the US. And yeah, so after that, yeah, going through that job, I got an admission at Georgia Tech for my master's in aerospace engineering. And yeah, that kind of job helped me through the application process, visa process, etc., etc. And then I ended up being doing a master's in the US.
So transitioning from India to the US, what was that like for you? Did you gain that? I know you're a mature student, you're doing your master's, but still making that transition to another continent, another country. How was that for you in your sense of belonging?
Yeah, so in my case, the initial transition was not that smooth
Hmm.
because I wouldn't say it was cultural shock or anything, but it was
Hmm.
something different for me. It was like uh, but not that different. So the lifestyle, the education system.
Hmm.
So in my case, going through the education system in India, which is very more or less similar to the one you have in the UK, which is like more rigorous, more intense
Hmm.
in a given semester. Whereas in the US, although it is intense, but it is like quite relaxed in a sense that you have the choice of choosing for subjects
Hmm.
that you can. So let's say in my undergrad, there was a fixed system that you have to opt for this. Like the course was quite stringent that
Hmm.
the system or the syllabus is giving you that course to study, not you're choosing to study that.
Hmm.
In the US, it was quite different. Um, So you had like number of courses that you can select from for every semester. But then that was the education side of that. But then the lifestyle was different for me, of course,
Hmm. Hmm.
from India to the US.
So, so okay, what was it that you were studying for your masters? What particular area were you studying, and how has that helped to shape what you're doing now?
Yeah, so I did my master's in aerospace engineering, and in that I was focusing on combustion research,
Hmm.
which is like the propulsion side of aerospace engineering, or the
Hmm.
uh, looking at the aircraft, not the space side, like the airspace, not the outer space.
Hmm.
Um, Yeah, so the initial couple of years, I was lucky to actually get a graduate teaching assistantship, which
Hmm.
paid for my tuition and also gave me a stipend, monthly stipend. But then I was also taking courses, I was doing teaching assistantship, and I was also doing research. So my week was like caught up, like I was almost working for 60 hours a week or so, because uh,
Because
because
you're juggling the studies
yeah,
and the work at the same
yeah,
time.
yeah, yeah,
Okay.
exactly.
And how did that then? So having completed that, did you what was your next steps? Why and how did you get to where you are?
Yeah, so in my first semester at Georgia Tech, I saw what research is. Like I had like first hands-on experience in terms of what research is and what it entails. So then I thought, it seems interesting to me. I mean, at that point, I was like, I'm thinking, it seems interesting. Should I get deeper into research? Should I
Hmm.
go for a PhD? Because
Hmm.
I was really enjoying the process of doing the research.
Yeah.
But I was still not sure whether I should continue doing a PhD at Georgia Tech or should I apply
Hmm.
elsewhere.
Hmm.
Uh, Given that I wanted to sort of, so the area that I wanted to do research or like basically having sort of that multidisciplinary angle to that, I was
Yeah.
coming up with ideas. I was having these side projects while I was also doing my, official research at Georgia Tech. Uh, but then I was not able to find the right people on
Hmm.
campus.
Hmm.
So I did apply to MIT for my PhD, but obviously it didn't go through given the rigorous process of
Hmm.
MIT admissions. Then I continued at Georgia Tech for a couple of years after my master's, doing research, this
Hmm.
research, and then while also simultaneously applying for or looking for PhD applications elsewhere.
Hmm. So you, so you definitely had, you continued doing work, but you still had this passion of, I enjoy the research, I want to take this deeper. Did you get
Yeah,
any advice? Did anyone help you along that journey to say, okay, yes, try this or try that?
yeah. I was lucky to have like really good mentors on Georgia Tech campus.
Hmm.
Uh, so I ended up taking quite a few courses, which is not directly related to aerospace engineering.
Hmm.
But those courses really helped me to ideate in in that regime of multidisciplinary research. So I was able
Hmm.
to apply different ideas that I was getting through. So, for example, I took a couple of courses from civil and environmental engineering at
Hmm.
Georgia Tech, which were focused on sustainability. So I used those, that kind of teachings, learnings from those courses in terms of what sustainability metrics are. Can I use those metrics for my aerospace research, for my engine research? So I was trying to come up with some ideas as to in the engine design process or in the
Hmm.
aircraft design process, can we make this decision making early on
Hmm.
in terms of making the aircraft more sustainable or basically having like these advanced concepts where you can increase the sustainability of
Hmm.
aircraft or engines.
Okay, so tell us about this, your PhD then, because you said mentors helped you along the way. How did you get your PhD, and how has it been impactful?
Yeah. So in that process, I came across, I was looking for, as I mentioned, I was looking for right advisors for my
Hmm.
PhD.
Hmm.
Uh, and this is, I was looking throughout the world. So I came across Dr. Mark Stetler, who ended up being my PhD supervisor at
Hmm.
Imperial College.
Hmm.
And I sent him an email, this is what I think. I have this idea. Does it make sense? I would like to, continue going in this area. And he was like, yeah, it's quite an interesting idea that you are pitching. Uh, and then yeah, sure, we can think of moving ahead with this. But currently, I don't have any funding, so you need to look for funding opportunities on campus or other scholarship schemes that you can apply for.
Yeah.
So one of his recommendations was applying for the President's PhD scholarship.
Hmm.
Uh, Given my profile that he thought was quite appropriate for getting the scholarship. So yeah, we both worked on it together, the application process for my PhD as well as for the scholarship. So he
Hmm.
helped me with sort of sharpening the case making for in the statement of intent for the scholarship.
Hmm. And you got a scholarship to
Yeah,
come to Imperial College.
yeah.
So
So I got the Imperial President's PhD scholarship.
wow, wow, that's a big scholarship. Yeah, that's
Yeah,
a good scholarship. Well done. Um, and through that process then of getting the scholarship, doing your PhD, all of these things, I'm seeing where you got those Forbes 30 under 30, um, in MIT, innovator under 35, etc. How did all of those accolades come about? What is your research, and how are you revolutionizing um, is it aviation?
aviation.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, so in my first semester, or in the first 6 odd months at
Mhm,
Imperial, so I was coming up with ideas for my PhD. But again, I used to pitch these ideas in terms of, can this be a PhD? So
mhm,
my supervisor, Mark Stetler, he was, you can be more ambitious. So he was like pushing me, because again, he knew my potential, but again,
mhm,
I was in that learning process as to defining what impact means, or
mhm,
understanding what impact means. So then, every meetings he used to tell me, Swapnil, you can be more ambitious. So, and read more literature. So he's like, read these things. What about hydrogen aircraft? So I was like very skeptical in the initial stages in terms of the safety. I was like, really hydrogen aircraft? And then I still go in literature, and reading through the literature, although it did make sense in terms of um, the environmental front, but then safety aspect was always concerning me.
mhm,
And then yeah, so just to give you that sort of reference point in terms of where I was in terms of being completely skeptical about hydrogen aircraft to going on to designing a full-fledged aircraft. So Uh, yeah, so the other my supervisor, Mark Stetler, as well as I had like secondary supervisor, Professor Peter Childs from the
mhm,
Dyson School. So yeah, both were quite uh, motivating me towards doing really impactful research in
mhm,
terms of its high level implication towards society and the environment. Um, so yeah, so initial stages, of course, as I said, I was skeptical, but then once I got that link in terms of what an hydrogen aircraft would be, what design aspects I need to consider, etc., etc. So I went through this, multiple iterations, of course. So design is never a single step process; it's like an iterative process. So yeah, I came up with certain designs, then improved on it. Then I looked at different architectures, and then apparently by the end of 2019 or so, I was almost done with my designing the engine or designing
mhm.
the aircraft, more or less. Again, this is like the adaptation of certain NASA aircrafts that I adapted, like the baseline, and adapting it to modifying that to a hydrogen aircraft. And then, yeah, so Forbes picked up the story through the nomination process. Yeah, and my friends recommended my name for the Forbes 30 under 30. And then simultaneously, that uh, so it was actually somewhere around the lockdown
Yeah.
of 2020 when the list came out. So usually Forbes has this event in London that they have every year when the list comes out, but
Mhm.
they gather all the Forbes lister in that year. But un unfortunate for me that because of the lockdown, it was not
Oh
uh,
no. Yeah.
organized. So the list came out in on March 17th,
Mhm,
2020, and
mhm.
the lockdown, I think, started around
The
the same time.
24th, about the 24th of March to 20. I remember it well. So that's really celebrations on one side, but you can't go and celebrate on the other side, as it were. But
Yeah.
clearly, the invention which or the innovation which you've looked into, because I remember whenever I think about hydrogen aircrafts, I think of the Zvittersburg, the big one, and it going up
Yeah.
in flames, and
Yeah.
everyone's saying it's dangerous. You can't be doing that.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
how did you get around? How was it? If you can tell us, that is,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, of course.
what was it? How have you kind of like got around that, and how is that more environmentally friendly? In what ways?
Yeah. So the Hindenburg incident
Hmm.
that blew up everything. So that actually used very, very crude materials. Like basically, it had like a cloth line which was
Hmm.
containing the gaseous hydrogen. So gaseous hydrogen, of course, it's very highly inflammable,
Hmm.
which is not the case in actual aircraft. So those would be using liquid hydrogen stored
Hmm.
cryogenic tanks made
Hmm.
from good materials. So
Hmm.
yeah, the safety angle is taken care of with
Hmm.
correct materials. And on the environmental front, uh, first I'll talk about the energy front. So
Hmm.
carrying hydrogen, um, in terms of the mass, you need to carry like almost one third of the mass that you'll carry on aircraft as
Hmm.
compared to regular aircraft. Just the fuel aspect, because it's very mass energy dense, liquid hydrogen, but its volume is 4 times as large as conventional fuel. So
Hmm.
accommodating that volume on aircraft is a huge design task. So you need to take these weight angles, so the weight aspect, the volume aspect,
Hmm.
and the also the safety aspect into consideration into the design process.
Hmm.
So basically, yeah, I'm looking into this next generation of uh, aircraft technology in terms of the architecture and the actual technology or the efficiency metrics
Hmm.
into the design process. So that enables that kind of volume accommodation for hydrogen
Hmm.
in the future. So the aircraft design that I came up with was it is something like 2035 onwards.
Okay, that's when you're hoping it will be launched, available for commercial
Yeah.
or commercial for
I
use.
mean, I mean, this is kind of the technology readiness level
Yeah,
that I'm looking at
yeah.
in future.
Because that was going to be my next question. When would it be coming online? And what
Yeah.
kind of?
So, so I stopped there. I didn't talk about the environmental side. So
Hmm.
when you burn hydrogen,
Hmm.
so let's say you're burning hydrocarbon versus you're burning hydrogen. Hydrocarbon will produce carbon emissions, CO2
Hmm.
emissions, whereas hydrogen does not have any carbon in itself. To
Hmm.
So when you burn hydrogen, you just produce water vapor and
Hmm.
some
Hmm.
NOx,
Hmm.
uh, depending on what combustor you're using. So if you're using the correct combustor, you'll just end up producing very small amount of NOx, which is
Hmm.
also NOx is like a harmful emission. But water vapor in itself is not environmentally hazardous, but at a
Hmm.
higher altitude with aircraft, you end up producing contrails.
Right,
So
right.
with hydrogen aircraft, you'll end up producing contrails as such, but not to the extent as you produce with jet fuel. But yes, hydrogen aircraft will have the environmental negativity in terms of the contrail formation.
Yeah, but
But the CO2, but the carbon emissions are gone.
yeah.
Uh,
Okay.
but then but then this is we are just talking about the operational side of the aircraft.
Yeah.
When you're producing hydrogen, depending on how you end up producing hydrogen, it is going to be the carbon intensity of hydrogen production is going to depend on how you produce it.
Hmm.
So you need to produce that hydrogen from a greener pathways.
Yeah. So it's all very fascinating, really good stuff. And you've also got an idea of where it's going to go. So I'm just thinking of time. We've kind of like almost out of time. Um, how do you envisage, or what kind of like will be the next generation of um environmental improvements which we'll need to meet our kind of like our environmental targets, reduction in carbon emissions and those kinds of things? What's your next on your invention list, as it were, or your innovation list? What would you see
Yeah,
as the next thing?
yeah. So I'm still working in this space of hydrogen aircrafts.
Hmm.
At the moment, there are quite a few things to be addressed. As I mentioned, the contrail formation is one
Hmm.
thing. Can we reduce the altitude, or I wouldn't say reduce, but can we modify the altitude of flying
Hmm.
so that the contrail formation can be avoided?
Hmm.
Uh, can we have so in terms of the details that go into hydrogen aircraft design, what are
Hmm.
those details that need to go
Hmm.
into it? Yeah, so on and so forth, like the kind of detailing that can be added. Because again, in my current case, like I just have a conceptual yet a sort of a detailed analysis of the aircraft
Mhm.
mission fuel burn. But again, that kind of detailing needs to be added once you go from the design stages to the manufacturing stage.
Fantastic. All right, I'm going to ask my final couple of questions. You've been really a brilliant guest. I'm going to ask the two questions which I always ask, which are, what advice would you have given to your younger self? Yeah. And the second part of the question is, what do you think your younger self would look at you now and say, wow?
Okay, so going to the first question,
Hmm.
so I tell my younger self to, manage your time,
Hmm.
uh, have a balance between playing cricket and studying.
Yeah.
Uh, Second thing I would advise my younger self is to not be shy, talk to people, because I always also tell my students when I'm teaching, networking is the key. So if you talk
Hmm.
to one person, one right person can lead you to 10 right people.
Mm.
So yeah, don't be
Hmm.
shy, talk to people. Re- don't feel that you are going to talk stupid things. Uh, it is a learning process. People keep learning throughout their lives. So you're never going to end up learning. So yeah, it's a learning process. Don't be shy and keep talking to people
Hmm.
and seek their advice and seek mentorship.
Mm. Brilliant. And what do you think your younger self would say, wow?
Uh, so my younger self would think of looking at the older self. Why have you stopped playing cricket? No, jokes apart, jokes apart. But yeah, I I think my younger self would probably uh, would have never imagined that I'll be where I am today. So I don't know, like it's difficult to actually come up with something.
That's
Uh,
all. I think you hit the nail on the head when you said your first one. Why have you stopped playing cricket? That's what you've
yeah,
done everything else, but why not cricket?
exactly.
No, that's fantastic. Um, Swapnil, Swapnil, it's been really great having you as our guest on Belonging this week, right? And I wish you all the success. I'm going to keep following your career to see where you go next, and looking forward to you making some real impact on the environmental elements and the aviation, because both of them, everybody likes to fly, but we want to do it in a much more environmentally friendly way. So
Yeah.
thank you so much for all of your efforts, and continue doing them. I'm going to just quickly share what we're doing next week, um, and then we will yeah, I'll share next week's program. So next week we're going to have Lena Cumberbatch, and she's a non-executive director and a diversity and inclusion for strategic change manager. She's done so much. It's going to be a real pleasure having her as our guest next week. In addition to that, on Thursday, please sign up on our QR code at the bottom. On Thursday, we're going to be having our Meet the Author session, and will be interviewing, or we'll have a discussion with Winston Crew. Um, he was one of 4 people who were wrongfully arrested um, and sentenced to 2 years in prison. He spent the next 50 years trying to clear his name, which he has done. And he's going to tell you about the book, one of the books which he's written, which is Rot at the Core. So please come along. That's in person at Imperial College on Thursday evening. And if you have missed any of the previous interviews, please go to our YouTube channel, and you'll see them there. And it's tinyurl.com/belonging-IAO. So once again, I want to just say a big thank you to our guests today, and thank you to all of the guests that we've had, because without them, their willingness to share their stories, we would not be able to gain and understand a better sense of our identity and belonging. So until next week, thank you very much, and we will see you very soon. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, Wayne. Thank you, Sarah. Thank you, Iona. Thank you, Naomi, for inviting me and having this discussion slash conversation.
Thank you.
All right. Thank